remind us that although the language of today positioned Dr. King as the champion of civil rights, championed him as the civil rights leader, that language often leaves out the fact that Dr. King at heart was a Baptist preacher. The platform, the foundation upon which he stood, was a platform of spiritual morals and values that was embedded within him as a child at the feet of his mother and his father. He never forgot the bridge that crossed him over, and he never forgot what he was all about. He came up in the Ebenezer church and he watched his dad, as his dad gave his life to the service of people. It left a mark upon the young Martin. And he was convicted, therefore, as he grew, that he would become a servant of the people. And as a result of that, he took his place in history. And we celebrate his birthday today simply because he was not afraid. He was not afraid to live out his hopes. He was not afraid to live out his dreams. He was not afraid to live out his aspirations. And there's so many instances when I think about Dr. King, I also think about our late congressman, a man who was inextricably linked to Dr. King and who started this because he indeed saw Dr. King as a role model. And I remember a few years ago, I received a call from a professor at Princeton University, a young man who was trying to get his papers to come to the United States of America. He'd gotten a full scholarship to go to Princeton Theological Seminary. And I remember receiving a call from that professor who said that this young man had walked 25 miles in order to get to the place where he could apply for his papers. He had gone there 3 times. Everything was fine, but they were denying him the right to come and to continue his education. I reached out to the congressman, and within a day or so, that young man had clearance. And on Wednesday night, when I finished my Bible study, I saw a young man coming down the aisle. He walked up to me and he shook my hand, and of course I did not know who he was, and I asked him, "Who are you?" And he said to me, "You may not know me well, but I was that young man that you and Congressman Donald Payne helped to come from Liberia over here to get my theological training." He said that I finished Princeton a few years ago, and he said, "I never came back to say thank you." He said, "But I came all the way to extend my hand, Pastor Jefferson, and to let you know how much I really appreciate you." He said, "I brought you a gift from Liberia. And I just want you to know that it may not have meant much to you, but you have helped me and my family so much." I thought about that moment and I thought to myself, a lot of individuals like that person. And as the professor from Princeton spoke to me, he said to me, "I know you have a lot on your plate." He said, "But you need to help this young man now." As I thought about that thing, I thought about a quote from Dr. King as he was in the Birmingham jail. He said, "For years now, I heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. But he said this wait has almost always meant never." And I believe that individuals who bring about cataclysmic change are those persons who can therefore have an instinct to at least grasp what I would call the now moment. They are persons who can distinguish the now from the never. They are persons who therefore understand that God moves, that his hand is upon time, and as a result of that, there is no waiting for tomorrow, but there is a now moment. The Mother Teresa's of the world, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s of the world, the Mahatma Gandhis of the world, the Barack Obamas of the world, the Harriet Tubmans of the world, the John F. Kennedys of the world. They are people who therefore represent and understand that there are some things that cannot be put off for tomorrow, but it must be acted upon now. And Dr. King seized that moment. Dr. King represented the fact that he understood that freedom could no longer be delayed, that a dream denied was a dream that would never come about. As a result of that, he took his stand. And the stand that he took was a stand which simply said, I will do what I need to do now in order to help set my people free. Beloved, as we come today, this cannot be another breakfast where we've come to share and eat in food only. But each and every one of us must leave here with a now moment in our hearts. We must see how God is moving in a very mysterious way. We must understand that there are issues that we must address now. We must learn that we must work together now. Division cannot become, if you will, the cancer of our society that continue to tear us apart and prevent us from focusing on the issues of today. Now is the moment for our community to come together. Now is the moment for us to focus on our children. Now is the moment for us to tackle things that we've never tackled before. Now is the moment for us to have a conscience and not therefore play politics, but move to do what we have to do to help people of the day in which we live. We remember Dr. King because he seized the now moment. And the now moment is upon us now. Now is the moment for us to pass gun control laws. Now is the moment for us to say, enough is enough. That we must stop the violence in our community. That we must make sure that our kids feel safe when they go to school. Now is the moment for us to rise up and to make sure, like Congressman Payne and Dr. King, that our future is secure in the young people in which we see every day and every night. Very recently, we went to service at 11:30. Where indeed we have now started to transform that service into a service for young people. And we have adults there, and we have a number of parents there who have come and they have said, thank you so much, because we can't focus on our children just on Children's Day. We must focus on our children 365 days a year. Our children need spiritual morals and values, and they need to understand how to make the right choices. How can they do that except we take the time to cultivate them? I am very blessed. I am very fortunate. I grew up in a two-parent household. I grew up amongst 15 children. I have 15 siblings. My mother was 97 years old, December the 13th. My mother is still enclosed in her. I remember so well how my father would bring us together around the table. And I remember so well how he would bless the food. And I remember so well how he would teach us. And I remember so well how he would say to us, I'm doing everything I can. I want you all to go further than I was able to go. I want you to get a good education. And I stand here today and say to you that out of 15 children, 12 to 13 of us graduated from college. And I stand here today and say to you that I know what can happen when parents are engaged in the lives of their children. I know what can happen when churches give attention to their children. I know what can happen when organizations like the YMCA take the time to cultivate young people. I know what can happen when you tell a child you can be anything that you want to be, as long as you put God first and as long as you have some morals and values. I know what individuals can do. And as a result of that, I say to you, now is the time for us to make sure that we focus on education. Now is the time for African American men to stand up, become mentors. I am so proud that we have a strong mentoring program in our church. Right now, we have some 95 young boys, young men who are engaged in the Eagle Academy. And we have a mentor in our church for every one of those boys, because they need to understand now how to be a man. They need to understand now how to start raising a family. They need to know right now what a good male role model is. And I want to encourage everybody in here today to make sure that you understand that the best way to therefore focus on men is to start with young boys and help them to understand that you don't want them to be a deadbeat dad when they grow up. They have to understand that they need. So it is very important to me that we understand that now is the moment for education. Now is the moment for us to address violence in our community. But now is also the moment for us to cultivate an economic base. This is not rocket science. This is not brain surgery. Any community that is without an economic base will be a community that is tempted to engage in violence. Any community that is without an economic base is a community where individuals therefore would not have what they need in order to survive. Now is the moment for African American, Latino businesses to partner with other corporations, to engage in contracts, to therefore start training students, to make sure that we can help create jobs not just downtown, but we need jobs in the South Ward. We need jobs in the West Ward. We need jobs in every aspect of our community. And how many of you all believe that we can grow those jobs? We can build those jobs. If we therefore stop trying to develop every country in the world and bring some of that money back into the United States of America, we can develop jobs in this country. I never will forget, and I'm not going to keep you long. If you want to hear me preach, you got to come to Metropolitan. I ain't going to preach this morning. But I never will forget that as I was speaking with my mom a couple of days ago, she shared something with me that she had never shared before. I asked her, how did we purchase the 20 acres of land that we live on today? And she said to me that they were living on a farm, and my dad was engaged in sharecropping. She said to me that it was after harvest time, and that my dad went to therefore get the money that he thought that he had earned as he had kept track of what he had done. And he was told that he didn't have anything. He was told that after all the labor that he had put in, he had nothing coming back. But all of those children, my mother said to me, my dad came back and he had tears coming down his eyes. She said to me that my dad said that there weren't to be, we're not going to live on nobody else's land ever again in our lives. It was during the Depression. And my dad had the ingenuity and charisma. And he went to a good friend of his who was a Caucasian. And that gentleman saw something in my father. And that gentleman loaned my dad, as my mother said to me, $15.50 to put down a down payment on 20 acres of land. And she said to me, it was hard for us then, son, but your father made monthly payments on that land. She said, many of you all don't know how that land came about. But she said that land was bought by your dad getting up early in the morning, going to the Louisiana ammunition plant and working. He didn't make much money, but every time he made something, he said, I'm working to own something. I don't want my children growing up on somebody else's property. I want my children to experience ownership. And I want them to have a sense of pride, a sense of dignity, to know that their father may not have graduated from high school, but he had enough wisdom to leave something for the children when he passed away. And I thought about that, and I thought about the fact that my dad, you see, seized the now moment. My dad had ingenuity. And he therefore created a partnership with this Caucasian gentleman, and saw something in him, and he was able to therefore purchase that land. And my mother said to me, you all have more opportunities today than we've ever had. She said to me, you ought to make sure that your grandchildren understand the legacy, that they stand on your father's shoulder, your grandfather's shoulder, that they are somebody, and that every day in their life they ought to make it count. And I say to everyone as we leave here, now is the moment. We can't wait any longer. We must make it count. Newark and the surrounding areas will be a better place when each and every one of us rise up and say, now is the moment. We're going to work together. We're going to make progress together. We're going to rise above a lot of the bickering, and we're going to do what Dr. King did, and that is say, now is the moment, and we will move forward, and we will bring about a change, and we will use this as a defining moment in life in our history. There was a biblical scripture. A young man by the name of Joseph, a young man who had a dream, and he shared that dream with his brothers. And there are always individuals who are dream busters because they didn't want the dream to become a reality. And when they saw little Joseph coming, they said, here comes the dreamer. We need to get rid of the dreamer because we don't want the dreamer to rise above us. And so they put Joseph in a dungeon. They left him to die. The Israelites came along, lifted Joseph out of that dungeon. I say to you today that they thought that they had killed the dream. But the dream lived on. We are here today because the dream lives on. This young man, Joseph, went from a hole in the ground to become the Secretary of State of all of Egypt. Pharaoh took off his ring and put it on his finger. Pharaoh took off his robe and put it on Joseph. Dr. King went from Atlanta, and he stood one day and he said, this church is not only my pulpit, but the world is my pulpit. He had a dream. I tell you, on Monday, the dream is still becoming a reality. For on Monday, for the second time, an African American will be sworn in as President of the United States.